everyone, and welcome back to another book review. Today I am going to be reviewing the Monocle Book of Homes, A Guide to Inspiring Residences. This is a coffee table style book and I gave it a read and I have many thoughts on it, so let's dive in. First, I'm going to start with the obligatory. It doesn't matter what your home looks like as long as it's filled with love and happiness and support and good memories, which is something I think that when I read another book by Monocle, I seemed to find there was a focus on high quality and expensive things, which are admittedly nice, but I think it's important to just put the obligatory reminder out there. It doesn't really matter what your home looks like if you have the important ingredients of like love and support, friendship, happiness, good memories. That's what really makes a home. That's what really makes a good home. So with that broad disclaimer on this entire video, I'm going to get into this book. So despite knowing what makes a good home, and you don't have to have expensive furniture or nice chairs or good lighting or a custom built house in the northern reaches of Sweden to have a good life, let's all admit that sometimes it's fun to look at nice or rich people's houses. I am not the only one who's watching those multi-million-dollar California house home tours on YouTube. They have many, many views, so I'm not the only one who likes looking at nice houses. I love my little apartment. I live in the Midwest. I have no desire to live in one of those houses in California, but it is nice to look at. And I think that's what this book kind of aims to get at, that desire all of us have to look at and enjoy beautiful things and beautiful homes. Maybe some of these homes we would like to live in more than others, but I think we can all take time to appreciate beautiful things while recognizing that we don't necessarily need those things to have a good life. This book is split into a variety of sections. I think the first section, which just has photographs of the residences, is probably the part that most people are going to expect, but this isn't just a book that has a collection of photographs. So the first section is the photographs of residences that Monocle finds particularly inspiring. That's called the homes. But then we have a section on essays. There's a section on community. I really like that section, talking about the community you live in and how it really makes a difference and an impact in how you live. It's not just the home, but also where the home is located and the community that you find yourself in. We have greenery, materials, details, and designs for living. That final section, designs for living, focuses on items you can particularly buy or items they recommend to, I guess, improve your home. Or if you're looking to add something to your home, they have a whole section that you can peruse at your leisure. So the first section is that section that I think most people are going to get this book for, and it has a lot of photographs of inspiring residences in their mind. So this section you could page through. This is the part that feels very coffee table book-esque. It's just beautiful pictures of interesting places to live. So I'm just going to flip through a couple here to kind of give you an idea. This has those glossy pages, but the other pages have more of a traditional page feel. That's the only way I can describe it. And these residences are not just from the US or North America. They do come from a wide variety of places. Again, when I flipped through these, I did find that some of them I felt like I connected with more than others, but they're just taking pictures of a wide variety of places that they find interesting or that they would like to live in, or I guess that they find inspiring. They don't have to necessarily, and by they I mean the people at Monocle, don't necessarily have to want to live in these places to enjoy them or appreciate the design in them. So that first section is just photographs, and that is pages 14 to 145, so you do get over 100 pages of photographs to look through before moving into the essays, the community, the greenery, the materials, the details, the design for living. Again, those are not glossy pages. Those are this other, I don't know what you'd call it, this other more traditional paper material, but it does feel pretty high quality. I'm not the best judge of that, but it's not cheap. And then we have this section in the back, which is that designs for living, where they recommend different items that you can purchase if you are looking for that in your home. Going back now and talking about the disclaimer at the beginning of the video, I do think that the authors or the people who edited this collection, Monocle Book of Homes, are aware of the fact that not everyone's going to be able to achieve this picture perfect residence. And they do talk about that throughout the book. There's actually a paragraph on page 154. It's the very last sentence if you want to follow along at home. It says that recognizing that even if our homes feel different, smell different, or look different in some ways, when designed with intent, they all have the power to open up room for healthy human experience and the increased well-being of our families, communities, and neighbors. So I do like that they are kind of acknowledging that. That was something in my previous book that I reviewed on Monocle. It was like Monocle Living or something. It had a yellow cover. I do remember it. Where I felt like that wasn't always acknowledged, that you didn't need these expensive things or these really high quality things to have a good life, although they can be nice. I felt like this book was much more focused in on the fact that you don't necessarily need all of this. Also, to that design section in the back where they're recommending products, they did mention that some of these items are going to be outside of people's prices, and you don't necessarily have to buy everything to have a well-designed home. These were just recommendations. So I felt like this volume was a little bit more self-aware than the previous one. While still nice to look through and good to look through, I felt like, again, this one was just more grounded in the sense that, again, it doesn't matter what your home looks like if it's designed with intent and is designed for your lifestyle, and if you keep some things in mind, you too can have a good home. And of course, if you have all those key things that make a good home that I mentioned in my disclaimer, which I'm not going to beat to death, hopefully. So I do think that this book was a little bit more self-aware than the previous Monocle book that I read. I also okay, so now we're going to get into, I'm going to do a little bit more praise and then kind of move into criticism. I'll talk about some things that I didn't like. So I think that the people who wrote in this essay section, and there's a variety, the essays are not long. So here's like concrete plans. We see it's literally a page. The essay's not very long. I think the people who wrote the essays always meant well. And I think they had a lot of right ideas. For example, on page 150, there's an author who talks about, or an essay, it's Ilsa Crawford, who writes about how care homes, where we put elderly people who maybe don't have families to take care of them, aren't always well designed or designed with human comfort. They're very sterile, they're very institutional, and that's not necessarily designed for human flourishing. And it's odd that we call them like care homes, and we put people in there who are quite vulnerable and could really use care and the care that can come from a well-designed environment. And I feel like the author really wants to redesign, or she's passionate, or she felt passionate enough to put in her essay about this design aspect of elder care homes, which is all well and good. I think that's true, and I do like that she's acknowledging that some of these places that people live aren't well designed and that can have a negative impact on them. However, the thing that was never addressed, and maybe this wasn't the time or space, I'm sure there's whole books that address this, is if you make, okay, so let's say this person she's a designer, yes. So maybe she designs a care home that's very well designed, and you know that if it's well designed and carefully crafted for resident comfort, it just becomes a luxury and is only accessible to the very top percentage of people. And I'm not opposed to people having luxury apartments or luxury care homes. It's that it was never acknowledged that, like, okay, let's say we upgrade a care, or let's say some of these apartment buildings that are showcased, maybe they're shown and it's like, this is great design. Okay, but how much is the rent? How much does it cost to get in one of these? Is this accessible to the average person? And that's where I felt like my disclaimer comes in at the beginning of the video, where these things are like shown as the ideal, or this is how things should be, but I don't think it's really addressed how are we going to make that available to everyone, or what are some practical tips that you can do. Let's say you are right out of college, you haven't landed a career track job, or you're trying to pay off some bills in your life. What can you do to make your home nice? I feel like I would have liked that. Or what can we do to make all care homes a little nicer? What can we do to make all elder care facilities a little bit more humanizing instead of that institutional look that I agree they all tend to have and tend to be a little dehumanizing? And what are these changes that we can make that don't put it so far out of the reach of everybody? What are things we can do so that all humans can take a little bit of comfort or can have slightly improved lives, not just the lives of those who have a lot of money to afford the expensive, nice, well-designed care community. So that was just a little criticism. I'm not entirely sure that's like the place in a book like this. You're reading this book to enjoy the content and enjoy the beautiful residences, but it is something in the back of my mind that I think about, and I just wonder, okay, if I don't earn a lot of money and I live in a big city and I'm stuck in this massive apartment building because it's the cheapest place to rent, like, how do all these things play out for people who don't have access to everything in here? I think that's another book, a separate book, but it's just something that does tend to come up when I'm reading these sort of things. The second comment I had, and this was more in line or more aimed at this photography section at the beginning, was everything was beautiful, but it was a tad sterile. They felt like Pinterest inspiration photos. So all of them are beautiful and they're designed to be looked at, and that's kind of the point. And I definitely think that when the photographers came in to photograph these residences, they cleaned everything up and they made everything look perfect, and they waited for the great lighting, because that's what they're doing. They're showing the residence in its best light. But the point that I'm trying to make is that this is a book for inspiring homes. So I don't mind these better home and garden looking photos where everything's perfect and everything's right where it is and it's the perfect lighting and everything's put away. But I also would have loved to see these houses in actual use, because you look at these photos and they don't feel like the home is in use. You feel like it's on display, which is fine for some photographs to say, hey, this is like the ideal. But if you're talking about these homes as a place to live, which is kind of the idea and inspiration of this book, how about also showing photographs alongside the beautiful photographs where everything's perfect, because we all like that, even if it's not realistic. We do like looking at those photographs. How about you also show how the house looks after 2 days of kids going to soccer practice and you've had a busy work meeting and you haven't been able to wash that bowl in the sink. You don't have to show disgusting, horrible houses, but just like how things actually look when you live in a house. When you live in a house, there's a blanket on the couch from when you were reading last night, and there's a cereal box on the counter. There's things out. There's a life that's been lived in the house. And so it did feel a little sterile. And because the focus was on good design to support like humans living in the house, I would have loved to see how those houses actually looked. Unless that's how these people actually live. If they actually live where they don't own a single possession and nothing's ever out on the counter, I'm not actually sure I would like to live in that house, because that feels very cold and sterile. When you walk into a house where everything's too perfect, where you feel like you have to sit on the edge of the couch and not breathe too much and don't touch anything, that's not comforting and welcoming. And I think that's the goal, and what the people in Monocle found inspiring in these houses was how well designed and how good for living in they were. So I would have liked to seen that reflected in some other photos showing people actually at work. Not sure how they would have accomplished it. That was just a little critique I had, and something I noticed when looking at the photographs. They just tended to feel a little bit sterile. Overall, though, I did really enjoy this book. The residences are inspiring, as advertised on the cover. It's pretty. It's like getting a Pinterest board for inspiration for your beautiful dream apartment or your beautiful dream house. I do like it. I thought it was interesting to read. A couple minor critiques, but I mean, I'm being overly picky at this point. It is an enjoyable book. Pick it up for your coffee table. If anything you saw or read or heard me talk about sounds interesting, it's definitely something that's worth checking out if that could be of interest to you. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.